All right. Welcome everyone to episode number 48. I accidentally said it was 48 the last episode, but it wasn't. It was actually 47. So this is actually truly episode 48. We want to thank everyone for being here, obviously, but we also want to thank our previous guest, George of KBO Collections from the Republic of Korea. And you can find him on Twitter and YouTube. It was great to hear his perspective on what it's like to be a baseball slash Hall of Famer and St. Louis Cardinals collector while residing in the Republic of Korea. The nuances of where breaking wax and getting the hits is more favored than building the sets was a very interesting storyline there too. Plus the technology innovation that we got to see in one of his videos where you can have like walk into a non-man 24/7 vending copy store. So uh, wish George all the best with his collecting, and we hope to have him back on in a future episode. Over to Meet for our tonight's guest.
So tonight we're really pleased to bring on this guest. Kent and I are trying to do more in the non-sport entertainment side of things. If you remember, our first guest was Billy Celio from Upper Deck. We just talked about entertainment autos and graphing. And Kent and I were going through our boxes, and we're like, why don't we get this guest? So we reached out to a friend of ours who's been on our show before, Dr. Price, who introduced us to Steve. So Steve, I wanted to bring on Steve, who's got more than 25 years of collecting experience in entertainment sports and is a collector himself. So let's bring on Steve.
Hello.
Hey, guys.
How are you?
I'm very good, thanks. Good to be here.
Great.
Yes, and for everyone who's watching, peek behind him. He has quite the wall of honor there, autographs there. Steve, we want to get into you as a collector, as a young boy. So can you tell us, like, how did it all start? Where did the bug start, and how did you get into collecting?
Oh, gosh. I started collecting as a kid. My brother and I would collect cards when we were little, and my dad used to buy boxes of Topps baseball cards. This is back in the late 60s, and he would do this magic trick where he would tell us to close our eyes, and he would put packs of baseball cards on top of the TV, and he'd ask us to open our eyes, and then the packs would be there. And of course, being like 5 years old or however old I was at that point, I thought it was the greatest thing ever. Baseball cards could just appear, and I just caught the collecting bug from there and just kept doing it. And I've been collecting all my life. Just fell in love with it and have that passion for it.
It's rare to find someone who actually enjoys what they do as a career. And it's not really a career. Like, if you love it, it's not really a job. So you definitely fit that bill right there. Early in your career, you served as a marketing and media relations for the NHL, so 85 to 88. You later worked on director of special projects for publicly held Scoreboard, 91 to 94, and entertainment director of Fleer Skybox, 94 to 99. What was it like for you to work for three very distinguished entities, and what would you say, what kind of experience have you gained from each?
Oh, wow. Well, I can tell you the NHL was loads of fun. It was my first job out of college. And working at the league office in Montreal. Actually, I started briefly in Toronto and then moved to Montreal, where I spent most of my time there. The Montreal Forum, the old Forum, not the new one, that was like my second home. And I mean, for a young guy, first job, I mean, I could go into the locker room. I could go into any arena. I got a chance to ride the bus with the Edmonton Oilers during the Stanley Cup Finals.
Wow.
I mean, there was some pretty cool times there, but I learned a lot, and learned a lot about how the business of sports works. Learned a lot about business of sports and entertainment, and ended up going to graduate school, get my business degree after that. And then I just lucked out. I wasn't really looking for a career in the collectibles world, but I happened to be in school here in the Philadelphia area, and the Scoreboard was based just outside of Philadelphia in South Jersey, and they were looking for somebody at that time. They were looking to get more into hockey and developing some other parts of their business. If you recall, they kind of pioneered the market for autographed memorabilia that was sold on TV. So if you recall, on Home Shopping or Canadian Home Shopping, you'd have Pete Rose baseballs and Nolan Ryan baseballs and Gretzky photos and all these things that were authentic autographs. That was pioneered by Scoreboard, and then I got hired by Fleer because they were looking to develop their entertainment business, and I thought, wow, that'd be kind of cool to go a little more mainstream instead of being kind of, with this with Scoreboard, which was, kind of on the outside of the mainstream of the trading card industry, because they didn't really have any mainstream licenses. There was a lot of draft pick products. I did a lot of the hockey draft picks for Scoreboard. If you remember Manon Rayom,
yes, of course.
Those cards that she did, that was my deal.
So no way.
That was my big claim
to
fame.
Wow.
Well, at least in terms of working at Scoreboard. It's funny because, I think about how much volume we did back then in the early 90s and how much Manon Rayom contributed. And it was really unbelievable. I mean, we sold, millions and millions of dollars of trading cards on the strength of Manon Rayom. And it was just like, by today's standards, it'd be sort of ridiculous how much product that was. But anyway, I learned a lot about how to make trading cards, all aspects of the business. It was always my goal to own my own company. And I spent my time at both Fleer and at Scoreboard kind of learning all aspects of what it means to run a trading card business or a memorabilia business. So it was, sales and marketing and promotions and advertising and physical production, design. I wanted to learn how everybody did their job, so that when I started Rittenhouse in '99, it was just me. I mean, I didn't have a staff. So, I knew enough to be dangerous, I guess. I could do a little bit of everything. And that's sort of how it kind of evolved.
When you were at Fleer Skybox, were you there when the crew that did the whole PMG, I can't remember the names, but they're escaping right now. They're at over deck now. But were you around when they were doing the work there on the PMGs and whatnot and the Skybox medals?
That may have been before the two companies merged, because I was at Fleer first.
Yeah.
And then Fleer bought Skybox, and then they brought Skybox up north. So probably that predates my time on the Skybox business.
Okay. So now we've got a bit of your background, a bit of your history. We have some Canadian ties as well. So just so everyone's listening, there's some Canadian ties here. Even though you're in Philly, you still have some Canadian ties in Montreal and Toronto too, but we'll get into that later.
I'm a dual citizen. I'm Canadian by birth.
Oh, there you go.
Where were you born?
I'm sorry?
Where were you born?
Well, I was born in the United States, but my father is from Toronto. And if you know anybody at all in the world, really, but if you run into anybody with the last name Charendoff, outside of my immediate family, almost all of them are going to be from Toronto, and they're all related to me.
Well, hilarious. It's a small world. Well, it's a really small world in that way.
Yeah, we've got some dentists, we got some urologists, we've got lots of different professions covered. So there's a good chance that you may run into a Charendoff at some point along the line if you live in Toronto.
Nice. First, I want to say hi to Rob. Rob, thanks for joining.
Hey, Rob.
And Korean Cardboard has joined. He said hello. He planned to buy some 2003 Rittenhouse Highlander series autos. Wondering if Steve handled those requests firsthand. Either way, want to know if actress Alexandra Vandernoot. I assume she wasn't, and she declined.
Wow, that goes back a little too far for me to remember. I mean, I do remember making Highlander cards, but that's some minutia right there. I wish I could say. I just don't recall.
What was the older guy in Highlander? What was his name again? The actor.
Oh yeah. Well, there was the guy in the movie, Christopher Lambert.
Yeah.
Yeah, he played in the movies, and then there was Adrian Paul who played the role in the TV series.
Right.
So
right.
we did cards for the TV series.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah,
That's,
we were going to do the movies too, but it got kind of complicated, and the licensing for it, the business side of it, kind of got a little messed up, and sometimes that happens.
true. True. So you did talk to us when we were talking a couple of days ago. You said there. Well, let's share with the audience. You have a story about how you inherited the Star Trek product line from Fleer Skybox from Ken Baroff.
Yeah.
And what did he tell you? So can you share that story? Because that story was pretty cool.
Sure. So, as I mentioned, Fleer bought Skybox. We were all part of Marvel at the time, before Marvel spun off the trading card business. So in any case, we ended up merging with Skybox, and they brought the Skybox operations up to New Jersey, where Fleer was located. And not everybody was coming up. And Ken Baroff, who was a wonderful guy, I haven't kept in touch with him. I don't know where he is at this point. I assume he's probably still in the Charlotte or Raleigh, Durham, I guess is really where they were based. But anyway, Ken had been working on the Star Trek business, among other product lines for Skybox at the time. And so he met with me, and he kind of gave me the ins and outs of the Star Trek business, because I was going to take that over for him. And he said to me with all seriousness, and it was as well intended a statement as could be. But he said to me, I really think I've done all that I can do with Star Trek. I just don't creatively. I don't think there's much more that I could do. And now this is back in 1995. So up to that point, no one had ever signed an autograph card for Star Trek. They had never made a series of cards for the original show, which was always my my great love in the world of science fiction, that and Twilight Zone. And, it was all I could do to contain myself when Ken is telling me this, about how he felt he couldn't do any more with it. And all I could think of is, you haven't done nearly enough with it. But I wasn't going to say that to him. And the reality is that, since then, I ended up making many more products, even while I was still at Fleer. We did the TOS cards, Series 1, 2, and 3, which are the autograph cards behind me.
And this is some of them here.
Yeah, we did. That one, the Nimoy one that you have there, is from the movies.
Oh, you're right, from Undiscovered Country.
We made some products for Voyager and from TNG and Deep Space Nine. And then, of course, I started Rittenhouse, and I just kept it going. And we've made, I think somebody told me the other day that we've made 90 products over the past 23 years for Star Trek. I'll just assume that that's correct. I've lost track, to be honest with you. There's so many products that we have made. But, my feeling about it is that, I love all of it. All you got to do is be creative with it. There's always a way of coming up with a new concept, even for something. I mean, look, the original show was long off the air by the time we ever made the first set of trading cards for it. And yet, we've continued to make cards for that on a very regular basis. And so, like these autograph cards that are on my wall behind me, there was 85 of them, 85 signed cards in those first 3 series that we did at Fleer. And it still ranks as, one of my great sources of pride in this business, to have done that, to do the first official autograph cards of Shatner, the first of Leonard, Nimoy, and so on. It's pretty cool. But since then, under my Rittenhouse brand, we've extended that from 85 cards that we did at Fleer to over 300 cards. We've continued the series, and the numbering has continued as well. So, continuity has been pretty important to us and to our collectors, and it's been a lot of fun to keep that going. And we still look for more and more actors who haven't yet signed. And and they seem to keep coming out of the woodwork. Even when we think we're done, we can't find the last person or the next person. There's always somebody that just all of a sudden pops out of nowhere, and it's like, oh, okay, let's make cards for that guy or that actress.
I'm a huge Star Trek nerd, so I love it. Like I was just telling you, I rewatched the entire Deep Space Nine series, and I have to get all those autos too. I wanted to ask you, what is the most obscure person you had to get, like someone you never thought you would ever get for a signing from Star Trek series?
Well, it wouldn't be obscure, but there have been people who have been elusive. I'm trying to think of who that most elusive person would be. I'm gonna have to come back to that one. It'll come to me. I know, like for James Bond, when we made the Bond cards, I know we're talking about Star Trek, but there are a few people that come to mind immediately for James Bond. Like we tried for 10 years, literally, to get Pierce Brosnan to sign cards. Couldn't get him at all. Same thing with Terry Hatcher. Just, it was no. And then finally, it was a yes. And then another yes. And so it happens that way sometimes. You just, you be persistent. And I guess maybe sometimes, dealing with the right agent at the right time. Yeah. We've got lots of great relationships with the talent agents, and sometimes that's what it takes. Along those same lines, we took on the license to make trading cards for Buffy the Vampire Slayer a few years ago.
Yes.
And if you recall, Inkworks had been making Buffy cards for many, many years. I mean, it was literally like almost their whole business. That's how they made their money. And they did really well with it, but they could never get Sarah Michelle Gellar to sign cards. Yeah. Never.
That's true. Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, one day, I'm talking to an agent for I don't know, some obscure actor. I don't even remember who it was. It was so obscure. And then I realized that this agent also represented Sarah Michelle Gellar. And I said, you think she got signed cards for us? And the agent said, sure, I'll get her to do it. And so there you go. I mean, sometimes it just works out that way.
And you also have the right attitude too, right? Like if you have a good personality and they want to work with you, that helps too. The one question I have is another question. Sorry, I'm going a little bit off track because I want to ask you this one question. How did you come up with the name Rittenhouse?
Rittenhouse Square is a notable downtown area in Philadelphia. Oh. So when I moved to Philadelphia, that's where I lived. And, I just came up with the name because I wasn't sure that it was just going to be trading cards. I thought, Rittenhouse Archives. The Rittenhouse part is obvious now. The Archives part of it was just kind of a catch-all, I guess, because I didn't want to call it like Rittenhouse Trading Cards or Steve's Trading Cards or, it sort of had a nice ring to it anyway.
No, I just forgot to ask you that.
So can I ask how the sci-fi hobby of it plays into Rittenhouse?
Good question. We were struggling to come up with a web address that would be memorable and somewhat easy for people to type in. Rittenhouse Archives is a bit long, and we thought sci-fi-hobby.com would be a little easier and a little more memorable. So that's just our website address.
Nice. It works. It's definitely in tune with that. So I'm going to go back to the questions here. I just lost track here. Give me 1 second.
The other part of the answer to that question actually is that when I came up with sci-fi-hobby.com, it was at a time at the beginning of the company when all we really were doing was science fiction and fantasy oriented trading cards. And I wasn't sure that we were always going to do that, even though that's the way it's played out. I thought if I got into some other aspect of collectibles, if I got into sports memorabilia or what have you, then we could create another website address that would be more specific to that as well, so that we didn't have to rely on one thing, which could end up being confusing for people who, if
Sure.
you're coming to a website that has Star Trek cards and Wayne Gretzky signed hockey sticks, or like it would just be a little weird.
Mind you, Gretzky is a bit of a science fiction anomaly. I mean, he's just that good. He could fit in pretty well with that. So, me being a Star Trek fan, I mentioned before, what does it feel like to be, one of the you've had it for such a long time, and like, how does it feel to have had the program that long for Star Trek? Are you very proud of it?
Oh yeah. Look, it's been the mainstay of our business. It's been an important part of my life, personally and professionally. It's been just tons of fun working on these products. Been a great, creative outlet for me personally, and I can think of so many different things that I could have done with my life. I mean, I went to business school, and a lot of my friends and from school went on to, finance careers and, more mainstream conventional types of jobs. And, look, some of them ended up going on making, tons more money than I've ever made. But, I probably had a lot more fun than they've had. So, I can't say enough good things about it and what it's meant to me and my family, and how it's given me a life that and a career that I really loved.
So I'm gonna put you on the spot a little bit, Steve. Who's your favorite character?
I will say that my favorite character is Spock.
I picked a good one. I picked a good card then.
Yeah. It's just tremendous character. You just think about the how Roddenberry would have come up with that character. Just a half-breed alien, half human, half Vulcan. A guy who doesn't really fit in. He's a little bit of a an outlier in both cultures, and he's just such a fascinating, not to no pun intended, but he's just a fascinating character with so much depth to him, and the way Nimoy played him was really incredible. I mean, you compare Nimoy to Nimoy's portrayal of Spock to, you name any other character in the realm of science fiction, and I would argue that Spock has so much more depth than, take your pick, Luke Skywalker, the Highlander.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it's the greatest character that was ever created in the history of science fiction.
He's my favorite, and Worf is my second favorite. So those are my two. And Renee Odo would be my third.
I'll tell you that one of the things about working on Star Trek over the years, as I have, it's given me an opportunity to interact with a number of the cast members, both starring cast and guest stars, and it's been a great experience to have those interactions, because a lot of times the actors will want to talk about their experiences, and especially the older ones who are retired. They like talking about the old days and that sort of thing. But Nimoy in particular just stands out as, he was everything that you would hope that Leonard Nimoy would be.
Yeah.
He was so Spock-like in a lot of ways, sort of just a very, virtuous kind of guy, I guess. Just a lot of charisma, and I looked up to him. Found him to be, really interesting guy to talk to, and he was always just so generous. And I don't know, just I'll always miss him because he was just such a good guy. And if we have the time, I can tell you a quick Nimoy story.
Go for it. We have time.
Go for it. Yeah,
okay.
For sure. Go for it.
So a friend of my family, a friend of my in-laws, I came to find out was a big Star Trek fan, and a Spock fan in particular. He loved Leonard Nimoy. And turned out this guy was dying of cancer. That's the bad part of the story, I guess. But in any case, so I find out about his love for Nimoy, and I thought, okay. I sent Nimoy an email and I said, look, I know this guy. He's really sick. He he's a big fan of yours. You know, if you're at all motivated to reach out to this guy and, lift his spirits, what have you, here's his number. If you don't want to do it, I don't know how many requests you get for this sort of thing. Don't worry about it. I've not said anything to him, but if it so moves you to pick up the phone and call the guy, have at it. So sure enough, Nimoy calls the guy and his wife answers the phone and she doesn't believe that it's Leonard Nimoy. And apparently he had just had some chemo and he was kind of out of it. So I don't know how much the conversation even he understood was actually Leonard Nimoy.
Yeah.
But he did that. Didn't have to do it. Didn't owe me anything. Didn't know this guy from anyone else in the world. Now, the punchline of the story is that Nimoy, unknown to me and most other people, was dying himself at that point. This was just a couple months before he himself passed away.
Yeah.
And so for him to take the time to call a complete stranger at that point in his life when he knew he was going to die. And I think, in fact, Nimoy actually passed away just before this other guy did. So I always thought, man, what a menschy guy to, to call a complete stranger like that, just to try to, lift the guy's spirits. And I'll never forget that. It was just really selfless thing to do.
Yeah, that's definitely a very heartwarming story, and it adds to my aura of Spock because he's definitely one of my heroes for sure. He definitely is one of my heroes, and it's for many reasons. We won't go into this now because it's about you, and I want to talk about you, not me. So, but I appreciate that story. So thank you very much for that, Steve. We have a couple of comments. I don't know what's going on here. I'm going to go back here. So let me really. Sure. Oh, Eric. Hey, Eric. Thanks for coming to the show. He says hello. Korean Cardboard. Jim Byrne. Oh, yeah. That was referring to the other TV show we were talking about. Sumo Puppies. Hello for coming. Korean Cardboard has a question for you. He says, looking back, are there any TV show sets Steve wish he had produced?
Sure. I really wish that we had been able to make the 1960s Batman.
Ooh.
That would have been phenomenal. And we tried so many different ways when I was both at Fleer, Skybox, and here at Rittenhouse. Just couldn't seem to get the business to line up to make that work. But boy, that would have been, just a treasure trove of material to work with. You think about all the costume characters and all the funny lines and all the crazy weapons and, the goofy battles and the cartoony campiness of that show. That would have been awesome. That's probably number one on my list.
One of our guests we had on before, Dennis, has an extensive. Actually, connect you both on Twitter, on Instagram. You can just see what he has. He is a chaser of the 1960s Batman autos from the TV show. He has quite the collection. So it was actually, it was amazing to watch. Let's see. Eric says Nimoy was from Boston, Massachusetts. Eric always talks about Boston. He has this thing where he has to promote Boston. Okay, fine. We got it, Eric. Boston's the best place on earth. And our friend Jeremy.
Hey, Jeremy.
Thanks for joining. So I'm going to pass it over before I get all nerdy. I'm going to pass it back over to you, Kent, or I'll talk again like usual.
No worries. So, Steve, when you kicked off Rittenhouse back in '99, do you recall what it was like to launch the very first product under the Rittenhouse name, and what product was it?
Well, I do remember the very first product was Star Trek in Motion, which was an oversized set of trading cards. They were 5x7 lenticular motion cards, and we also had cards with sound chips in them, which was actually pretty funny at the time. So because I had just started Rittenhouse, the deal that Fleer Skybox had to make Star Trek cards hadn't quite expired. So I had to kind of work around the edges of what was available. So I had to do something in a larger format until I could get the license, to make regular size trading cards. But the funny part of that was that every box of cards had a sound chip card in it. And depending on what pressure you applied to the box, you could set off the sound chip. And so what would happen is the UPS drivers would come and pick up the cases. I would ship them out of my garage, and the UPS drivers would start freaking out because they'd be driving down the street and they'd go over a bump or something, and the sound chips would activate, and they'd hear Captain Kirk, saying, something like "love between a man and a woman," and it's like, what the heck is going on? And there were a lot of funny moments with the UPS drivers. So that was the first product. The first regular size product was the Twilight Zone, the first series of Twilight Zone cards, which that was a great source of pride because no one had ever done that before. I mean, obviously Star Trek had been done before, but nobody thought the Twilight Zone was viable except me, I guess. And I could never get the powers that be at Fleer to agree to let me do it there. That's a crazy story unto itself, but we don't have time for it. But anyway, we had Shatner sign cards for that first set, and Vera Miles, and Buddy Ebsen, Jonathan Winter, Jack Klugman. I mean, we had a lot of really good people who signed cards for that first series, and then of course it went on to, I think we've now done at least 5, maybe 6 full series of Twilight Zone cards over the years, and they've all.
If I'm not mistaken, you also had Leonard sign for that too, no?
What's that?
You also had Leonard Nimoy sign for that series too.
Yeah. Nimoy was in there, and James Doohan and George Takei. Jack Klugman signed a few times before he passed away. Burt Reynolds signed for us.
Oh, interesting.
There were a handful of pretty interesting actors who signed for that obviously went on to have much bigger careers later on. But everybody that I came into contact with, and I came into contact personally with a lot of those actors, because at the time most of them were retired when they were signing cards for us, and it really didn't matter how much success an actor had otherwise, but they always look back with an immense amount of pride and fondness for their role on Twilight Zone. All these actors, it doesn't matter how big a role or small a role, they all look back on it as being, a source of great pride because of the what that show has meant to so many people for so long. I mean, that started in 1959, and it became so iconic. So, it's a badge of honor for most of these actors, including like Burt Reynolds and, you name it. They all look back on the experience as just being something great to have been a part of. And they all wanted to be a part of the trading cards too.
It's interesting because you had Kim Cattrall, right? As also was on Star Trek before she went to Sex and the City, and she signed for you as well, right?
She signed Star Trek cards. Yep.
Yeah. So she was a big shot too at that time. There's a couple of crossovers. I remember, opening and going through the cards, and I'm like, really? I don't remember them being in Twilight Zone. I don't remember this person being here. So it's interesting to see that.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun working on that. That probably ranks second to Star Trek for me in terms of fun and for me, a source of pride because it had never been done, and um, it was kind of cool to launch something from scratch that was such an iconic series. It had been around for so long and really hadn't yet been touched.
For sure. So, Steve, one of the unique offerings with the Rittenhouse and its product lines is the case incentive. So, why is it still an important offering to have the case incentive to local hobby stores and collectors alike? Like, why is it important for you to still have that as as an item?
Um, it's actually pretty simple, I think. Usually those cards are considered to be high value. Um, it's an easy way for the customer, whether it's a dealer or a collector, um, to get something of value. If it's a dealer, that they can sell quickly, um, and easily, so they can make money from it, and ultimately it gets into the hands of collectors who tend to value those cards. So it's just been a good way of accelerating the process of collecting, I guess you'd say, and encouraging dealers to buy in, and make it easier for them to recoup some of their investment.
Hmm.
And it seems to work. Um, I think most of our collectors enjoy the opportunity to get those cards.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, I don't think there's too much more magic to it than that.
So, kind of segues into my next line of questions here. So, one of the great aspects of any product lines for your company is the archive box. Now, the archive box is literally a box with all the base cards, with all the inserts, and basically all the autograph hits. So, how did the archive box concept come about? And because no other competitors in your space offer the archive box.
Well, let me just correct one thing about
Oh,
what you
sure.
said about the archive box. It typically includes most cards in each product. It doesn't include everything.
Okay.
It sort of varies from product to product depending on what's available, and what quantities. So, cards that are numbered typically don't make it into the archive box. And with some of the projects that we've done where, there might be 100 different autographs, but maybe only 50 different signers. So there might be, two different versions or even three different versions of autographs for some people. In that instance, we would typically only put one of those autographs into the archive box. So the other ones
Okay.
you'd have to find in the packs. But it just depends from one product to the next as to what's included. But um, where did that start? I think the first product that we did that with might have been James Bond Die Another Day, if I'm not
Oh,
mistaken, back in 2002 or 2003. So it's been almost 20 years since we've been making those boxes. And again, it was like the other incentives, a good way of um, giving the dealers something of great value and rewarding them for buying a large number of cases. And so they really weren't initially ever getting into the hands of collectors directly. They were always just for dealers. And then the dealers could sell them to collectors, and if a collector wanted to get most of the cards in a product without having to bust open 10 cases or whatever it might be, they could at least sort of take a shortcut,
hmm.
even though not everything would be in the archive box. So just another way of creating something of value. I guess
Yeah. No, like you said,
that's kind of it.
yeah, it's very unique because no other competitor of yours actually does even think about doing it. So it's really
Yeah,
neat.
it's sort of a mystery actually, but look, everybody has their own take on it. We don't do it for absolutely every product. Like Game of Thrones, um, Iron Anniversary didn't have archive boxes, and some of the, like in Star Trek 50th anniversary, some of those products didn't have it either. But most of our products certainly have. Just depends.
So one of the things for most of us collectors that are older, so back before the web was around, promo cards were the thing. You had to get promo cards. It's the only way that you can kind of introduce someone to your set, right? They used to slip them in Beckett magazine. I remember some promo cards.
Yep.
There was I think a non-sport magazine. I can't remember what its name. It's called Non-Sport Update. I think it was.
Non-sport update. Yeah.
Yep. Non-sport update.
Yeah. So
they still publish.
They still publish that?
Oh yeah. Yep.
Oh, yeah? Okay. But those were the ways to get cards, promo cards, into the hands of collectors. Look at it. And some of those cards now are fairly valuable, right? There are some copies of certain cards that are very expensive.
Yeah.
You're still doing it right now. You still allow the opportunity for people to get promo cards. So why did you want to keep that? And was it an homage to the days of old school, or was it just, how did you come up with it?
We've just always done them. We don't make quite as many as we used to, because we don't, in the older days, I mean, even the old days now are like back like 5 years. That's the old days. It used to be, a lot of our collectors being of a certain age, they weren't always so internet savvy. So we'd have to do things old school. I mean, in our marketplace, we're catering more to a more mature audience. A lot of our collectors are in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. So it tends to skew a little older. So, they like to have promo cards. I mean, who doesn't? I mean, that's the whole point of collecting is you want to have something physical to hold in your hand and to touch and to feel. And it's one reason why, the whole concept of these NFTs is a mystery to me. I don't get why anybody would want that. And even the digital cards, I don't get why anybody would want that. I don't know why anybody would want to own, other than purely for an investment purpose, not for the pride of ownership of the item, but like the fractional ownership of like investing in a Michael Jordan rookie card or a Wayne Gretzky, PSA 10 OPC rookie, or something like that, and to own 1% of it. I mean, for me personally, I don't know why I'd want to have anything to do with that, because I'll never be able to hold the card. I'll never touch it. To me, this whole hobby is about holding the cards in your hands and being able to look at them and flip them and trade them and look at the fronts, look at the backs, put them in albums. It's a touch and feel kind of collecting thing to do. It's a touch and feel hobby. That sounds a little weird, actually, but anyhow, you know what I mean.
For sure.
So, promo cards have always been, kind of an important and very inexpensive way, quite honestly. I mean, it doesn't cost us much to print promo cards, so why not? Where it becomes expensive for us is not printing the cards, but shipping them out to people.
Yeah.
So, that's where we've kind of cut back a little bit, because we have found that a lot of times we'd send out promo cards to dealers, and the next thing we know, they're just selling them and not give them away. That's fine.
Right.
All day long, give them away. But if you're going to just sell them, then that's kind of not the point. But it's still a good way to promote the product that we're making.
Yeah, it's true. And I still have a soft spot for promo cards, and I still have some in my collection. We have a couple of questions here. Give me 1 second so Korean cardboard. Has Steve met any celebrities while doing this? Appears most of his sets have had on-card auto, or the card shipped to the agent and back to Steve. That's actually one of our questions.
Okay.
You can answer that. And just before you do that, Korean cardboard, if you have more questions, just ask. Yeah, go ahead.
It's a mix. We have agreements in writing with all the people that we do business with, so that's sort of a starting point. And sometimes we do the signings. Sometimes I do the signings in person, and that's fun. I remember going up to do a signing with Kate Mulgrew in her apartment in the upper west side of Manhattan, which was really kind of fun. She lived in a great neighborhood and a great apartment, and had a really nice time hanging out with her for an afternoon. Interesting lady. So, it varies. There's some people that it's impractical for us to meet with in person. But we work around that, and there's other ways that we deal with signings in that fashion.
And then Eric says NFT stands for not for touching. He has nothing positive to say about him, so you have someone who agrees with you there.
Yeah, I don't get it.
The other thing about Rittenhouse that's unique, and you still do, is you divulge the number of hobby boxes made for your product line. So one of the sore points in other manufacturers is we don't know how much is being produced, right? So there's conversations about Topps running the presses or Panini running the presses. You don't really know how much are being produced. And we had these guys who are math wizards can actually reverse engineer how much is produced by looking at the odds of the different inserts, but you just tell everyone how much you're making, how many you're making. So why did you do
that? When I started Rittenhouse, I just really wanted the company to be as transparent as possible. Just for the obvious reasons, people want to know how many cards are made. And it seemed to me that there really wasn't a good reason not to tell people how many you're making. I mean, it's not like we were going to go back to press. I know that sometimes has happened in the history of this industry. Yeah. You can, you hear the stories about Upper Deck high number hockey from whatever year that was that they did hockey the first time around. We were never about that. It was always, we were going to make 6,000 boxes of whatever the product was, or 10,000 boxes. We might as well just tell people and put the number on the box. Adds an element of I guess legitimacy and authenticity and collectability.
No, it's important. I like the transparent aspect, and it also reduces you're just running the presses. So that I do like. On the flip side, when it comes to your autograph inserts, you come in on rarities. You don't go it's not a serial number. It's either extremely limited or limited, right? So
there's a few different levels. There's limited, very limited, extremely limited, and scarce. Yeah. We try to give ranges. It just to us it's easier to deal with that because sometimes the numbers will change as we move through to final production. Often we'll discover that there's a pile of smudges and we take those cards out, and we don't discover that until maybe late in the process. So it just became easier for us to kind of give a more ballpark estimate.
That makes sense. And I think Kent, back over to you, buddy.
Yeah. So one of the things you still do today is the points on the wrappers. Mm-hmm. So was that how did that come about? Was it kind of like a way for you to realize that when people send in wrappers that that people are breaking your products? Like how did that concept come up?
Geez, I'm trying to remember. How did that come up? Well, I think what we wanted to do was give people added motivation for breaking open the boxes in the pack, so that there would be something of value that they could get. Just a rewards program like any other, rewards or affinity program. It really was as simple as that, and it was reasonably easy for us to come up with cards that would have, decent amount of value that would be worthwhile for people to send in their wrappers. So it just seemed like a win-win, with all of this. Look, I am a collector at heart. I grew up collecting. I come into this as a collector first, I approach all the products that I make first and foremost as a collector. It was one of the lessons that I learned working for Scoreboard and at Fleer. And I learned also, in interacting with people from other companies in this marketplace too, and understanding how they go about their business. And I always thought it was kind of backwards. Look, we're not in what I would call the commodities business. We're in the collectibles business. We're not marketing something where you just sell as much as you can and you restock it when you run out. And, that's not what this is. This is all about scarcity, and it's about collectability, and it's about creating at least the perception of value. Because let's face it, whether it's a Leonard Nimoy autograph card or a Mike Trout rookie or a Wayne Gretzky rookie, or whatever, it's just ink on paper. In and of itself, it doesn't have any real intrinsic value. It's all about what the perception is of the item. Just like artwork or other things that people will pay lots of money for. So when I was at those other companies, the whole approach was about, okay, we need to sell $1 million worth of this product, and we need to generate 40% gross profit and blah blah blah. It's just, no, that's not to me how you succeed in this business. Now, look, I'm only one guy. I don't profess to have all the answers, but it's worked for me.
Right.
That, I try to build the best product that I can build. And then I worry about the economics of it. So, like the question that you were asking me earlier about, all the cast of Picard signing cards for Series 1. Well, we didn't put all the autographs of all those starring cast members into Series 1 because we want to leave something for Series 2 and beyond. So it's not like I'm just on a mission to throw absolutely everything into every product, and the economic aspects of it, be damned. I still got to make it all work. But in that context, the first and foremost issue to me is creating the most collectible product that I can. And even if that means holding somebody back, so that the next product remains collectible too.
Yeah.
But, whether it's promo cards or rewards cards or putting points on the wrapper or all of that, it all comes down to, how are we going to build something here that I would want to collect first and foremost? Because if I want to collect it, then I kind of feel like most of our customers will want to collect it. And I take feedback from a lot of our customers too. And, there are people who make great suggestions about people to sign autographs or do insert sets or different kinds of things that we end up doing. So, that's really where it begins for me, is creating the most collectible products possible. And then I worry about, the other aspects of it later. And to me, that's the formula for financial success, is creating a product success. Like you look at, I don't know how many times I get phone calls from my dealers and collectors who say, oh, geez, this other company, I'm not going to name names here, you can draw your own conclusions, but, I just bought this product from, a company that makes baseball cards, and they just did a major science fiction product that, it's like horrible, but I got to have it, but it doesn't have any value. And, look, this is an obsessive compulsive kind of hobby. I mean, I'm guilty of it. I collect lots of things, and it's, it's fun. It's fun to be a little obsessive compulsive.
Yeah.
That's part of the whole deal. But anyway, I'm sort of rambling here. I just,
No,
I feel very passionate about it.
Yeah, for sure.
about creating real value and creating the best possible products that we can, and then we worry about the business aspects of it later. And that, to me, that's worked out.
There's
No.
there's a couple of questions in here.
Yeah, go for it first.
So Korean Cardboard asking, you made X-Files in 95 and 96, and MLB and other exclusive licenses now, which I believe are more recent thing. Did Topps have the license that expired with Fox to allow you to do Series 10 and 11, or was it an open license?
I guess the answer to that is yes to both questions. It was available to us because Topps wasn't doing it anymore. It's funny because that's happened a few times in our history at Rittenhouse. They did Xena Warrior Princess cards way back when, and then they just gave it up, and we picked it up, and it ended up being a huge seller for us.
Yeah.
But we did it in a much, I think, much better way than they ever did. The problem with this is my opinion. Other people might take exception to it, but the way I see it is that the major sports card companies, whether it's Topps or Panini or Upper Deck at this point, I mean, there's been others over the years, but those are the three that still exist. When the sports card market is robust, they tend not to pay attention to entertainment.
Yeah.
And when there's sort of a lull for whatever reason in the sports card market and their sales start to drop, then they start looking for other properties to work on. And the trouble with that is that by the time they get around to actually making the product, for the entertainment product, it takes so long to do that the sports card market has typically come back up.
Right.
And that's what they want to pay attention to. And I don't blame them. That's what they should pay attention to. So these other products tend to, get kind of lost in the shuffle of everything else that they're doing, trying to sell their mainstream products. Now, having said that, I mean, Topps has done a good job with some things. I don't knock them for everything that they've done. And they're certainly the granddaddy of this industry. There's no question about it. They've been around the longest, and they deserve credit for, really creating this market in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. But they will work on some of these properties, and then, because they don't do a deep dive, because they don't really put in the same kind of effort that we'll put into it, it'll lapse. And then we pick it up, like we picked up Xena, we picked up X-Files. Inkworks used to do James Bond, and they lost that deal, and we picked it up, and we had more success with it than they did, because of our approach. And that's just the way it works out sometimes. I think that for us, because we're primarily an entertainment card company and not really anything else, and the franchises that we work with, we want to be experts in it. Somebody, whether it's me or someone else on my staff, is going to be an expert in whatever that TV show or movie franchise is. And we'll do a deep dive, and we'll go as deep into the autograph cards as we can. We'll go deep into the mythology as we can, and try to do as good a job as we can with it, so that the diehard collector is going to be satisfied. And if that person's satisfied, then the casual fan is going to be satisfied too.
I wonder what, with Fanatics buying Topps, what happens now with those entertainment products. I guess it remains to be seen. And sorry, go ahead. You were going to say something, Steve? Go ahead.
No, I share your wonder about that. It's an interesting question. I hear a lot of platitudes, I guess, from the people who have taken over Topps and what they want to do to grow the industry, and I hope they're successful with it. I may be a little cynical about that, to be honest, only because when I was at Fleer Skybox at a time when the market, went through a very similar boom period in the early 90s, late 80s into the early 90s, before the market kind of contracted on itself.
Yes.
We would hire people who were, marketing experts from, the biggest companies in the world. They'd be hired to, grow the business and change things, and market trading cards like they'd never been marketed before. And we were going to, turn trading cards into the biggest mainstream phenomenon. And it didn't happen. And it wasn't like it was one person that tried doing this. It was many people that tried doing this. And, I think there's just a reality to how much growth you can honestly achieve, and whether that can be engineered in some methodical, systematic, programmable way, if you will, versus what we've seen over the past 2 years. Did anybody, like 5 years ago, could anybody have seen the meteoric growth that has occurred now over the past 2 years or so in trading cards? I mean, look, COVID has probably played a significant part in that, because people are home, they have money. Collecting cards is a hobby you can do without, having to interact with other human beings. We all have missed going to conventions, but fundamentally you don't need that, and you can collect by buying things online.
True.
And most people do. So, it's going to be interesting to watch what they do at Fanatics. How much it impacts the entertainment category, I'm not sure, because it seems like Fanatics is really heavily focused on the sports market, selling sports apparel, caps, shirts, sweatshirts, whatever. They've conquered that business. It's like, I don't think there's going to be anybody that knocks them off. They're here to stay in that category. But whether they can really make a meaningful difference in the trading card space, I don't know. I do worry as a collector. I worry about one company controlling the football, baseball, and basketball product lines. I mean, I'm sure the Tops, now that they're owned by Fanatics, I mean, they Fanatics kind of had to buy a trading card company, because the infrastructure just wasn't there,
Right.
otherwise. So I have no doubt that they could create enough of those products, but there's something to be said for diversity of the creative process. Like, I wouldn't want, a small group of people to be responsible for like the people who create all of the Topps baseball products. I wouldn't want them to be creating all of the products for all of those sports, because it's going to get a little bit stale, I think. I think there's value in having the people from Panini, and certainly Upper Deck is still, on its own doing hockey, and it looks like they will be for a while still, which is good. Nobody does hockey better than Upper Deck. So, I'd like to think that, if we had, for example, say 2 baseball brands and 2 football brands and 2, whatever, for any of these sports, if here at Rittenhouse we were doing that, we could come up with some fantastic products. But when you're tasked with making a new series of cards in each of those sports that has to come out every week of the year, I mean, which is literally what they've been doing. I mean, pretty much it's like one product a week in baseball. I think at some point you just can't be as creative managing all of that, all under one roof with the same people. So
Yeah,
I
I do see your point there. I mean, the only thing I was thinking about, this is more comic relief on my side, is, Fanatics wants to get in the cosplay outfits. There is a jersey sales and cosplay. They could go that way.
Yeah. Look, they're on the path to conquer, conquer the world in a lot of ways. I mean, there's so many ways that they could go beyond what they've already done that would capitalize on their expertise. I mean, they've got a great marketing machine, and certainly they've got access to a lot of people who want to buy licensed merchandise. But it's a big leap from selling licensed apparel, which is not inherently collectible to most people.
Yeah.
There is a certain collectible aspect of it, like with sneakers, and although I don't think they're doing anything with sneakers at this point, but I mean, there's a small aspect of collectible apparel, I guess, but for the most part, you wear it.
Right.
You know, you wear it out, you buy another one, and you're not worried about what the value is going to be later on. So, you know, it's a different dynamic. I mean, there's no question that to be successful in this space, you really have to understand why people collect. And if you don't come from that perspective, I mean, I know you guys have to appreciate that. I know I do, because I look at everything in this category as being collectible in some way. And what is the value? So what is the perceived value? It's
Right.
Well, we'll find out in what, 5 years. Well, the jury's out. We'll find out in 5 years what happens.
Yeah, I suppose.
I'm happy Upper Deck's still on their own because I have a lot of good friends at Upper Deck, so I want them to keep their jobs for the most part. That's the most important thing to me.
Yeah.
And we want to make sure you keep you, unless Fanatics going to come knock on your door, Steve. I don't know. We'll find out.
I don't expect that. You know, look. I would relish the opportunity to expand in ways that allow us to do what we really do well here. I mean, it'd be fun to work on Star Wars. We've never done that. It's the one big franchise that we've never worked with. That would be kind of cool. You know, there's things that Topps does that I find interesting that they probably don't give a whole lot of thought to that would be really cool to me. But I don't know. That I don't see that likely to happen, but you never know.
True. Sorry, Kent, I went off. You go ahead.
No, okay. So going back to your products, one of the consistent things you've had over the years is the fact that all your autographs were actually on card. Was there ever a point that you would consider stickers, or that's just not in Rittenhouse's game?
It just never made sense to me to go down that path. To be honest with you, to me, it's a lazy man's way of going about making autograph cards in this business. I don't know how else to put it. I mean, I think that the people who do it, I mean, look, I can't say that we'll never do it, but there's got to be a real good reason to do it. Like, it would have to be such an extreme example. Like, I could see if, I don't know, if Patrick Stewart all of a sudden, you know, was in Philadelphia and he said, Steve, come on down and let's have dinner, and, you know, and I'll sign some autographs for you. And I had to get something to him that same day, you know, because I was never going to be able to get him to do it again. I mean, okay, I might not have cards for him that day, so okay, I'll do stickers. Just I'll get him to sign something. But, you know, if you have any amount of time to plan it out, it's not difficult. Now, for me, I plan my products, you know, like 2, 3, 4 years in advance.
Right.
So I'm always thinking ahead. And, you know, when I get somebody like Shatner to sign cards or Patrick Stewart to sign cards, whatever, I'm typically not putting like one thing in front of them at a time. I'm going to, you know, put a lot of things in front of them that I can use over time. So I don't know. The whole sticker thing bugs me. I know most people hate them. It doesn't present well. So again, to me, it's kind of a lazy man's marketing tool. I don't get it. Like, to me, it's like numbering your boxes. Why can't you number your boxes? Just do it.
Right. Yeah.
You know.
Although I had the idea of having lunch with Patrick would be to do. I forget the autograph. I would just go have lunch with him. Anyway, sorry.
Well, he hasn't ever called me actually to do that, so I just it was for exposition purposes.
Even
Sure.
an extra asked me to go for lunch. I'd probably go.
It'd still be a cool lunch to have with Patrick Stewart, though.
Yeah, it would be. That could be a bucket list. That's a bucket list moment. I'll add it to it, but it'll never happen. Anyway, go ahead.
Now, Steve, you haven't done sticker autographs, thankfully, but you have done cut signatures. For example, like Gene Roddenberry and Sean Connery. What was that like to try and get cut signatures of those two fellows and to ensure that they were authentic, actually signed by them?
The Roddenberry autographs were directly from his estate. So they were off of canceled checks. So, we really weren't too concerned about, the provenance. We weren't concerned at all about the provenance. I mean, they came from his son and they were his checks. So, that was kind of a no-brainer. And he was deceased by the time we started making any sort of autograph cards at all. So there wasn't ever an opportunity to get him to sign anything for us. So, you make the most of that with people who are deceased. Same thing with Rod Serling. We've done a number of cut signatures with him as well. And again, we've been fortunate to find quantities of his original checks. So, the provenance of those are really not in question. And the Connery autographs, similar sort of thing. They were not canceled checks, but they were from a signing that he did for a book series, or rather a book that he wrote and published. And there was a number of those books that he signed, that were, they were designed to be sold as signed books. So we just bought the books, and they also, they came from sources that were, the provenance of which, we had no doubt about.
Right. Oh, good answer. I like that. That's good. Do you ever get kind of saddened that when you're no longer making a particular product line and then some other competitors picked it up and they start making it, and I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but you see how their product comes out, does it bother you that maybe it's not what you would have done per se with that product?
Sure.
Good answer.
Because everybody else in this business, I'll stop there. No, I mean, yeah, I mean, there's a certain amount of pride that I take in what we bring to these products creatively, because not everybody will approach it the same way. Sometimes, like, the one that probably sticks out, I guess, is James Bond, because we made the Bond cards for many, many years.
Yes, you did. Yep.
15 years or so. And we did more with that than anybody had done previously. We had, I don't know, geez, I want to say like 250 actors from all the Bond movies signed cards for us. It was a heck of a collection. I mean, really, I could never have envisioned going as far as we did with it when we first started. But I really got into it. And at the end, it became a business decision, not a creative decision to continue with it. There just became a reality to how much money we had to put out to keep the license, versus what we knew we could do creatively with it. And so we had to let it go. And obviously Upper Deck has picked it up, and they haven't really done much with it, quite honestly, since then. They've made some products, but anyhow, with the new movie having come out not that long ago, it would have been nice to have continued with those new assets, to have built on what we had started. But look, it wasn't meant to be. But look, it may turn out, who knows, maybe somewhere down the line we end up going back and doing more Bond cards. Maybe Upper Deck's run comes to an end at some point, and we pick it up again. There's other product lines. I mean, there's the Marvel cards that Upper Deck does. What else is there? I guess Cryptozoic does the DC Comics cards. In some cases, it's disappointing to lose pieces of business. In other cases, like I mentioned with Bond, it becomes sort of a business decision that isn't maybe obvious to people on the outside. Like with DC, we ran into a situation there where we just couldn't do the things that we wanted to do creatively because the studio itself wanted to control all of it. They wanted to dictate all the creative aspects of the products, and basically just use us to print and package and market, and we would assume all the risk while they did the creative work. And in my opinion, they didn't, they just weren't going to do it in a way that was consistent with what I thought the market wanted, and what we would have done. That's a tough place to be in, quite honestly, because ultimately, the licensor or the studio, they ultimately, control these things. So it's unusual though for a studio to do that. Most of the time, they want their licensees to go out and develop and be creative and do their own thing and put their imprint on it. So anyway, that's a long answer, I guess, like a lot of these answers tonight. It's a long answer to a short question.
We really, really, really appreciate you doing this. And I know we're at the hour and a bit mark, but we have a few more questions. If you're okay with that, we'll just keep going.
Yep.
Cool.
As long as my phone holds out.
We'll try it. We've got about not that much left. We're pretty good. So one thing you do, and a good friend of our show, Dr. Brian Price, does, is you guys are very active on message boards, right? You communicate with the collectors and fans of your product lines. I know Dr. Price often seeks out, through our channels or various sites. Hobby Insider is another one where he asks for input on a product line. Why is that interaction important to you? And why are you doing it and not a PR person? Why do you want to do it?
Because I enjoy it. Simple as that. Like I said, I'm a collector, and I know the products that we make as well as anybody does. So why not? I like for people to get, answers from me, rather than some third party who may not necessarily have the knowledge at his or her fingertips.
No, that makes sense.
Well, not everybody does it though. I mean, try to get somebody from Topps or Panini or even Upper Deck. I'm not sure how communicative they are in the same way. I mean, I'm pretty accessible. I mean, people post things to our online forum, and I reply. I don't always reply the same day, but I eventually reply. I'm pretty easy to get a hold of. I try not to hide behind too many layers of bureaucracy, I guess. People email me directly sometimes, and I'm happy to give them answers. Look, this hobby is all about having fun, and it's a business, but it's about having fun first and foremost. And if we're not making people happy. If they're not having fun collecting cards, then what's the point? And to me, I don't need to be high and mighty about who I am and the fact that I publish trading cards. You know, I appreciate hearing the feedback directly from my customers. So why not? And you know what? For the most part, people are very respectful. They're appreciative of the time that I spend talking to them, whether it's verbally or in writing. So, why not? I mean, maybe if I was, in a working, making cards for baseball or, where the market is so much larger and there's so many more people to communicate with, maybe I'd be a little bit more selective about how accessible I might be. I don't know. I suspect it wouldn't change. I mean, I really I like communicating with people. I like knowing why they collect. I like understanding what they like about our products. I like getting the feedback of the suggestions that they have for things that we might do. I mean, they're not always practical. Some ideas, are ideas that we're already working on, but still, it's nice to communicate with people and to let them know that we value what they have to say. Without them, I'm doing something else with my career, I guess, and I don't know what that would be. So that's a fun part of the business as far as I'm concerned.
So speaking of, okay, I'm gonna flip the order of the questions here. So actually, no, we'll save that. We'll save that one. Let's go back to the product. So, some of your product lines, obviously, Star Trek, Game of Thrones, Doctor Who. Actually, Kent, you should take this question because it's about Doctor Who. You take the Doctor Who question because I can't stand the show. You go ahead.
Can't stand the show. I don't want to hear that.
Sorry, there's only one sci-fi in my world. That's Star Trek. And that's it.
So you recently had added Doctor Who as to one of your new product line offerings,
Yep.
which I'm very happy to hear. So for you, what was it like for Rittenhouse to be partnering with a beloved UK science fiction show as long as it's been running as Doctor Who?
Awesome. Just awesome. There are, well, before we got the Doctor Who license, I can tell you that for many, many years we tried to get the Doctor Who license, and for whatever reason it just didn't line up. But you think about the history of science fiction franchises, and that's on the Mount Rushmore of sci-fi franchises. I mean, quite honestly, you've got Star Trek, Star Wars, Doctor Who. I don't know what comes next. For me, probably Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
Maybe X-Files is in there somewhere.
Sure. Good, yeah.
We've been fortunate to work on most of those. Doctor Who just always was kind of elusive to us, but it was always on my radar, and I love the fact that it's it goes back so many generations now.
Right.
And, it's had so many different iterations, so many different actors who have played the Doctor, so many different companions, so many storylines. I mean, it is so rich with material and characters and storyline. I mean, granted, it's a goofy, campy kind of show that it appeals to those of us who like goofy, campy shows. Like I said about like the 1960s Batman show. I mean, it's goofy and campy. It doesn't appeal to everybody, but I don't know. It was always, Doctor Who was always one that I wanted to pursue, and the BBC has been fabulous to work with, and the actors so far that we've been working with have been great. Jodie Whittaker, who plays the current Doctor, she's already signed cards for us. She did inscription autographs for us.
Ooh, cool.
We got Christopher Eccleston to sign cards for us, and he's never signed cards before.
No, he hasn't. That's awesome. Yeah.
So that was a real coup to get him, because I didn't know that we would, since he had never been willing to do it before. David Tennant's going to sign cards for us, and we're going to keep working on down the list. But what a franchise! I mean, just so robust.
I am so looking forward to it. I can't tell you, because especially for Doctor Who on card autos. Now, there's a previous company that did Doctor Who with sticker
Yeah.
autos,
Yeah.
and for some of the I'll say the older generation actors, they have really nice autographs. So for them to squish it on a sticker, it doesn't,
I said it before. It's the lazy man's way of going about autograph cards. I mean, no one can convince me that they had to do stickers for that. All you had to do was just. I mean, for all the different cards they made, it wasn't that complicated, and they just could have made the cards so they could have been signed on card. But okay, good for me.
No, for sure. I'm looking forward to it.
So our cards will end up being more collectible. It's as simple as that.
So the one question, Korean Cardboard is now following you on @Sci-Fi Hobby on Instagram. So he says, really enjoyed the show. Thanks for all of this. Sorry, I should show the comment. Eric is not promoting Boston right now. He's talking about the Umbrella Academy. So you went to your site, saw you made Umbrella Academy. My daughter loves the show. Nothing came up on the site, however. Are you still selling them or have pictures to see?
The show was supposed to come back on Christmas Day.
Right.
And for some reason that hasn't been explained to us, it didn't. But the show is supposed to come back. I think there was actually something posted by the studio in the last day or two that kind of teased the fact that the show was coming back this year. So we've just been waiting for that to happen before we would announce our next Umbrella Academy product. But we're eager to get that going. We have a lot of autograph cards signed by stars and guest stars at the show, and looking forward to that second season. Well, third season of the show.
I would love to see you get The Witcher. That's my favorite show right now, so that would be cool.
Which one?
The Witcher on Netflix. That show.
Yeah, a lot of people ask us about that. If it becomes available, we would certainly be interested in it. The best I can tell is that there just doesn't seem to be any merchandise around that show, and I'm assuming that there are some business and legal reasons for that, which may not be very satisfying for people who want licensed merchandise, including trading cards for it. But it sometimes happens that way. We had that experience with the Boys.
Oh, the Boys, yeah.
With the Karate Kid and what's the sequel to Karate Kid? What's it called? The new show.
Yes, I know it.
Well, whatever. What?
Cobra Kai. Yes, that's it. Cobra Kai.
So, it turned out that the studio just didn't have the ability to license it out for merchandise, because they didn't. I mean, they can do things like T-shirts that have sort of the movie name on it, or the TV show name, but I guess they didn't have the rights to use the actors' images on product, and I don't know. It just becomes a bit of a mess that in the end makes it impractical for the studio to license it out, and then the products that those of us who collect and want to make trading cards, just get shut out.
By the way, I didn't see this here. Peeps, thanks for coming to the show. Sorry I missed you. And The Witcher has action figures. That's Korean Cardboard to let us know about that.
Yeah, but I think the action figures are not based on the TV show. I think the action figures are based on the video game.
Oh, okay.
I believe that's the case.
There's a lot of good shows on Netflix that could make interesting trading cards, but we'll save that for another time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So going back to the questions, you already talked about your favorite guest signer experiences, unless you want to expand on that. But I think you pretty much said Nimoy was top of the list. Did you want to touch on any others that you thought were their favorites? Your favorites, sorry?
Well, I'll tell you what I'm keenly paying attention to, and I think maybe more and more people are starting to pay attention to it as well. Way back when, I guess this would have been like 2007, we made the trading cards for the first Iron Man movie.
Yes, you did.
And of course, that was before, the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe took off. It really started with that movie. Even though Spider-Man predated Iron Man, Spider-Man wasn't made by Marvel Studios. It was made by Sony.
That's right.
Under license from Marvel. Anyway, so we were making those cards, and we got Robert Downey Jr. to sign cards for us, along with Jeff Bridges and Terrence Howard, who was the original
James Rhodes.
Yeah. Right. That Don Cheadle then picked up and played afterwards. But so we had Robert Downey Jr. sign cards for us, and of course, he never signed for anybody after that.
Nope.
No.
And not even on stickers.
Nope.
So that card, I think, it's already like a $10,000 card, give or take.
It's gone up.
Yep. Yeah, probably so. It seems like every day the price goes up.
Yeah.
But I think that card has the potential, if not the likelihood, of becoming the first $100,000 entertainment autograph card. And I believe that because, Downey is really the focal point of the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe. And the way these things tend to play out, if you look back over time, a lot of collectible phenomena, really take off in a big way when kids who collected whatever it was or watched whatever it was, they grow up and then they have disposable income. So if you sort of jump forward like 20 years, or if you look back 20 years, like you look at what's happening now with Yu-Gi-Oh cards and Pokemon cards and Magic the Gathering. I mean, who would have thought 20, 30 years ago that, an original box of any of these kinds of cards would be going for hundreds of thousands of dollars? But it's because people now are grown up. The kids who played with those cards are now grown up and they've got disposable income, and they're all competing for those rare boxes. Well, I think the same thing is likely to happen with Robert Downey Jr. down the road, if not even sooner, because there's only so many of those cards that are in the market.
And he signed two different versions, right? There's an Iron Man one.
He did sign two different versions, yeah.
Both boxes.
So I don't know. I think about the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe and how big a deal that is worldwide. I mean, that's bigger than baseball, football, basketball, hockey combined, and in terms of universal worldwide popularity. And if you're going to collect anything from that whole phenomenon, it's that Robert Downey Jr. autograph card. That's just, and I would say that even if it wasn't my card, but it is my card. So, I do think it's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out over time. I'm really,
I'd agree with you for sure.
Really keen on seeing the growth of that one.
And the beauty of it is it's on card. It's not a sticker.
No, it's on card, and it's actually a very nice looking card. I have many friends who are tracking that card because they are looking to get it. So it's out of my price range, but I would love to get it. I will tell you one thing: Marvel cards. Because I'm very much into the entertainment space. The Marvel cards have taken off. It's been insane, like what people are paying for TMG and whatnot. Like you see, Spider-Man Blue TMG went for $132,000 US. So that's crazy. So we're in an interesting space, and you had a part to play in the beginning. So there is a part to play in there, Steve. We have two more questions left. If you don't mind, and we'll go through that. having been in this space for many, many years, actually, I hear a lot of clicking. Is that you? Oh, sorry.
Oh, you guys just froze up on me.
Oh,
Shoot.
Can you
Are you
hear me?
there?
you're still there. We can still hear you.
We can hear
Okay.
you.
I can hear you now. Something's
Okay.
going wrong here, but I don't know why.
I'm going to ask you the last two questions before your phone dies.
Okay.
So, one of the things is a lot of these hobby shows and trading like the National and the Sport Card Expo up here in Toronto is a lot of manufacturers come up here, and I wanted to ask you: do you ever see yourself coming up to Toronto and setting up at the Sport Card Expo, or going to the National? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
We've done the National in the past. The last time it was in Atlantic City, we did it because it was close to us. We don't do too many shows because it tends to be a little bit cost prohibitive for us to
Sure.
to travel and set up a booth. And we've done the San Diego Comic-Con and we've done the National once. It's not an inexpensive deal. And I wrestle with this because I want to be visible to people, but I also got to be smart with how we spend our discretionary dollars to advertise and to promote. So what we try to do, I've been to the Toronto Sports Card Expo many times, just walking the show.
Oh,
Oh, really? Okay.
I love that show. I've missed it over the past couple of years. I know it's coming back. It has come back already.
yeah, it did. It did. Yeah.
You're more than welcome to come up in June. I'd be honored to have you come to the show. I'm sure another Steve who runs the show, would love to have you there. So,
well, I may actually come in June. I'm thinking about that, but what we found to be more successful is to create some unique promo cards for some of these shows and allow the dealers that work with us to distribute them on our behalf, because then it drives traffic to their booths and it's a win-win for everybody. So it's not for lack of wanting to do this sort of thing, but there's when it comes to these kinds of shows where they're attracting primarily sports card collectors and not necessarily entertainment card collectors, it's questionable as to how effective that could be for us.
Sure. So Kent and I have been doing the show for 25 years.
Yeah, about that.
In the last 2 years, more people are asking about entertainment stuff than I've ever seen before. So there is hope for the entertainment side. So we're coming down to our last question. I want to thank you very much for taking the time to do this. We're down to our last question, which is our favorite question to ask. But before we do that, everyone who's watching, you can always follow at Sci-Fi Hobby on Instagram and go to sci-fi-hobby.com to find out the product that Steve and Rittenhouse are releasing. We're going to ask you the last question, Steve. What inspires you?
What inspires me?
Can be anything.
Ask what my favorite swear word was.
Well, you can tell us that too if you want, but
we'll keep it a family rated.
Yeah,
show.
there you go. There you go. Yeah.
What inspires me? Gosh. Making people happy. That's really why we do this, why I do this. Makes me happy to do this. It makes me happy to make other people happy to collect our cards. I love hearing from people who enjoy what we do and people who thank us for what we do, and that inspires me.
Awesome. That was a great answer. I really appreciate that. I think the crack's coming from me.
I think it might be.
I'm gonna go on mute. Kent, you go ahead and end the show.
Sure. So, Steve, we'll get you to hang out for a little bit, but this is the end of the show. Thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight. We appreciate it. Again, thank you, Steve, for being a guest. And,
my pleasure.
And we'll call it a night. So, everybody, have a good night. Thanks for coming by. We'll see you then next week.